New podcast out with Lauren Jones. It's the first one we're going to do where we have a guest come back and share a very relevant update about how their career has followed a nonlinear path. Lauren explains how a merger kind of went backwards for her and they ended up parting ways amicably, but how it was quite a learning experience through her career path. She learned, I think there's three big takeaways that she dives into that are awesome in the podcast. Please tune in. Really, don't forget your relationships is number one. Number two is that a lack of clear expectations kills relationships. And number three being be unapologetically you. Awesome conversation. A little shorter than the normal podcast. I think you're going to absolutely love it. Check it out. Lauren Jones, thank you very much for coming back to Beers and Careers.
Oh, well, I was excited to come back. I felt obliged to come back after we sat down and had such a wonderful conversation. What a cool experience. I mean, just that initial podcast, taking the, for those listeners, I took a red eye, right?
Yes.
I went, I changed. We took the hour-long Uber ride, came out there. I did your podcast, and then I got the Corvette ride back.
Yes, that's right.
With Dries from Chat Automation and did an episode of his podcast on the way back. So it was very productive time, but super fun. And I was thinking about you when the episode came out, and I thought you might see a series from me on LinkedIn about some of my biggest failures in 2024. And I thought that was something that people don't talk about enough. And I thought that your listeners could gain some value from some of my mistakes because there were aplenty in 2024.
Well, the feeling's mutual. I think we all are. As someone who coaches youth hockey every day and youth lacrosse all the time, I think we're constantly failing forward, right? And so I don't.
Yes.
But at the time, it's a lonely place when it's happening.
Yeah.
It's and
Yeah.
emotional. And I will admit though, like most things in life, you are kind of helping me out. When you reached out and you're like, "Hey, I want to do an update podcast," I was like, "Oh my God, I've been thinking about doing a series like this." So we're gonna make this the first. This is phenomenal.
I love it. I love it.
And I know a lot has changed since the podcast
Yeah.
aired, and now we're recording in early 2025 here. So maybe I'll let you kick it off. Well, first of all,
Sure.
Lauren Jones owns Lead Consulting, but at the time you were in the middle of a merger
Yep.
with another organization, and things have changed since. So I'll hand it over to you and let you give the big text, big bold font for everyone.
Yes, big bold font. So let me start with this, and you and I talked about this on the last podcast, right? Women-owned firms, we are just we hold a different set of playing cards when it comes to owning a business. Women get 2% of PEVC funding. Services business just in general aren't really attractive to PEVC firms. So I found myself, as I was looking for ways to grow, looking for the path that was going to be right for us. And so, we entered into conversations with Newberry, who we have no hard feelings towards, and we entered into a merger agreement on March 5th of 2024. We exited that partnership in August of 2024. And, right after the end of the partnership, I think I just was filled with immense sadness, failure, like I had let everybody down, because you have to remember I took my whole team with me, and I felt as if I had made a decision. I had gone all in on that decision, and it just didn't work out. And it wasn't necessarily, something that was, my decision. And when it's out of your control like that, you feel sad, you feel lonely, you feel helpless, right? There are all of those different emotions that you go through. you can't, or you feel like you can't really rely on your team because you don't want to worry them, right? You don't want to worry them. You don't want them to know what's the scary thoughts that are going through your head. You're supposed to be the fearless leader that's, kind of charging forward through all of this. But let me tell you something. It's remarkable what we can do when we are pressed up against a wall.
Mm.
Because what we achieved in the very short period of time upon, exiting the partnership was, I think, nothing short of I don't want to. It was nothing short of what I felt was totally insurmountable at the time. Getting, my team was 1099 previously, and they were W2, and they wanted to obviously come back to leap under W2. I had no idea how to figure all of this out, right? Like,
Yes.
1099s and W2s are two totally different things. Two totally different things, and there's a totally different level of investment and stress and all of that. And
Infrastructure, the whole thing.
infrastructure, the whole thing. And I sat there, Mark, going, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure this out? And I spent a good couple days trying to figure it out on my own, filing all the paperwork in the 4 different states where we are. And I was like, this is bonkers. This is bonkers.
Yes.
There's like, I am just, I that's not my role. It's not my jam. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, I have worked so hard throughout my career, to build all of these partnerships. There has to be a tool out there that I've either helped create or advised for, right? Like, I'm thinking all of these things that are right in front of your face. And so lesson number 1 is, don't forget the all of the relationships that you've invested in, over time. They're right in front of your face, because it took me, I think, longer than it should have for me to go, oh my God, yes. As a matter of fact, you did help build a product
Yes.
that does payroll as a service, and you did, you have all of these relationships. And so, we have a fantastic partnership with TechServe 360. And for those, small firms that, don't want to be burdened by payroll and they want payroll as a service, they're phenomenal.
Mm.
So, we figured that part out. The second thing that, I came back to my people, because obviously they're looking to me for answers of, why didn't this partnership work out? And, again, there's no lying, cheating, when
Yeah.
people are getting divorced or separating, right? Like, it wasn't anything like that. It just didn't work. But there were a couple things that I needed to have my people learn from this so that we could be stronger moving forward. And so the first was, unspoken expectations are the killer of all things.
Mm.
I and I think that's really important, for your listeners, for leaders to understand that clarity of expectation, how you expect people to get there, how you're going to monitor that, what those things are expected of you and from your team in a situation like your need to be out there, set in, just really transparent. And I think for me, that is a really valuable lesson. Um, and one that I think that people forget about: unspoken expectations. Any to think about a time where you've gotten in an argument with your spouse, right? Like, anytime I've gotten in an argument, it's because I expected something of my husband that he had no idea
Right.
that I
Right.
was expecting, right? Like,
And it
and
usually happens. It usually, like the your spouse example is a perfect one, because I find that as you get closer, I fell into this trap myself in 2024. So failures of 2024. I feel like as you get closer to someone and work with them
yep,
every day, you
yep,
you just tend to make more assumptions that you are on
yes,
the same page and you have the same
yes,
expectations, but in reality, two people heard something a little differently, and then it diverted a
yep,
little further every day. It's like it's a very annoying part of the human condition, because you feel like you feel like you've got these people like like my wife, your husband, that you're lockstep with,
Yes.
and then something pisses them off, and you're like, wow, we actually no, we never did talk about that. I just assumed you thought about it the exact
Yes.
same way I did.
Yes, and that is precisely it. And I said, that is something valuable for our customers to be able to have us learn from is, clarity of their expectations. We go into a discovery, and regardless of what's in the sow, one of our first questions is, okay, so what do you expect from this experience? What are you
Yes.
expecting of us? I know we have a statement of work and we're going to get through that whole little list, but just asking that question mark has opened a
Mm-hmm.
whole new conversation. Again, even though we've put together these detailed statements of work, there are other softer expectations. Well, I expect that we're going to talk once a week. Oh, okay. Well, okay, so that's probably
Good to
something that
know.
we should
Good to
good
know.
to know. I expected that we'd have a steering call every 2 weeks with all of our executives. Okay, well,
Yeah.
had no idea. So it's those little things that unspoken expectations are the killer of relationships, whether it's a customer, a personal, and that was a really valuable lesson coming out of this. So we started with, don't forget the resources and the relationships that are right in front of your face, and then unspoken expectations are the killer of all dreams. And then thirdly, I think that we learned the the value of knowing who you are and being completely unrelenting and unforgiving about it. Like,
Yeah. Unapologetically
um,
you.
unapologetic. And I think that it makes me feel really good in my heart. Our first core value is we lead with empathy always. That is number one. We lead with empathy always. People don't think talking about tech is an emotional, and I'm like, look, these are mom and pop agencies that are making these giant investments with their money. It's emotional. People are emotional about money. And it doesn't matter. And so, we lead with empathy always. That's our core value. And um, I have a quirky team. I love them, and I have always been very, very liberal when it comes to how my people get from point A to point Z. And I will tell you, it was a very large bone of contention for between me and my previous, leaders.
Yeah.
I had one old boss he was a military guy, right? Military guy, and all your salespeople need to be in at 8 a.m. And I said, why? Right? Like I want to. Why? Like if my salesperson can get to 10 meetings before, geographically before they get to the office, I want them doing that,
Right.
right?
Right.
you know, if you so I used to challenge those types of, this is the way that we do it. Why?
Yes.
why does it have to be done that way? And so we are always challenging those sort of norms, and I think that's okay. And I think for your listeners, being absolutely unapologetic about where you draw the line in the sand, who your people are, and who you how you want your firm or your business represented. Like those are things that you should be unapologetic about.
Yes.
And again, while this really, we part ways as friends. I have nothing bad to say about the team that we merged with. We did it for a very good reason and with very good intention, and it didn't work out. And I'm finally at the point where I can say, and that's okay,
Yeah.
and not have my feelings hurt or my ego in the way. My ego was so bruised,
Mm-hmm.
and wounded, but there's a saying, ego is easing greatness out, or easing goodness out, or easing God out. Pick your G. Um, but when that ego gets loud, something good is being kept at bay.
Yes.
And so that is a hard dynamic. That it's hard to have that emotion at the same time that you're going through something that is bruising
Yeah.
your ego. So
Mm.
I've had to really get to a point where I'm not emotional when I talk about failure. I want people to learn from my failures, particularly women. Look, and my husband tells me this. He's like, if you hadn't done this, you would have looked back and gone, well, what if?
Yeah.
What if and he's not wrong.
Right.
I'm a ruminator. I'm an overthinker. Like, I would have ruminated on this forever if I hadn't taken the risk.
Mm.
So, at the end of the day, um, I am super glad that we took the risk. It's made us stronger coming out of it. We now have a very, very strong bench of additional team members. I brought Rob on as a salesperson, and now we're seeing some pretty incredible growth even as we come into Q1, which I'm really
That's
excited
excellent.
about. So yeah, I mean, there's a happy ending to the story. It didn't come without blood, sweat, tears, lost
Yeah.
sleep,
I'm
all of those
guessing.
things.
I'm guessing August was not the best month.
August and September were just a little bit of a shitstorm, if I'm
Yeah, I
being
can imagine.
honest.
I can imagine. Did you feel like um it's so funny because hindsight is, you know, hindsight's 2020, as they say.
Yes.
Um and I know you just said if I had never done it, I would have ruminated about it forever. And
I
which
would
is
have.
like, I mean, that hits me because I identify with those exact feelings. Was the ego, was any of the ego piece you being like, damn, I should have trusted my gut? Like, did you feel like you knew, not
Mm,
before then, but during the process of going through it, when you're working on the merger and you're going, this is a little weird, or I don't know. Like, was there something in your gut that was ever awry?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that part of me, because of the reason that I was doing it, right? Let's go back to what got me there, right? As I had been looking for investors or
Yes.
funding, or to grow the organization, and I had just, I talked with some investors. Okay, we're not interested in services. You don't have MRR or ARR. So I went and I created MRR with
Yeah.
services. So we had recurring revenue in services, with our packages and our service packages each month. And I was still met with, the okay, great, this is awesome. As soon as you get to 15 million, like, we're ready to go. I'm like, how am I supposed to get to 15 million
Right.
with no
Right.
money, right?
I need your money
It's
to get to
I
15.
need
Yes.
your money to get there, right? And so the merge to me seemed like I was doing the right thing by my people. And I'm a much older entrepreneur, which I have to think a little bit differently. I don't have, this sounds so, ominous. I don't have time like other entrepreneurs
Yeah.
do, right? It- because I am over 50, right? Like,
I
I
don't
I
believe you, but sure. I don't believe you. I
yeah,
don't I like I feel
I
like
am.
the only reason I say that is I can't imagine you not working. I can't.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't
I,
imagine.
I think about my exit. I think about
Yeah.
time. And I've always felt like I'm on this, shortened time frame,
Yes.
having done this later in life, and that in and of itself is a choice, right? Like, I don't know that I would have ever opened my firm when my girls were home,
Right.
and I really enjoyed having a corporate, cushy corporate job that allowed me to go to every soccer game and be at all the things, and I don't know that I would have chosen differently. I admire the women that do that. But that was very much a choice for me. And so, if you go back to why I made the choice that I made to go into this merger, all things sort of aligned to, this is the right thing to do. In my soul, right? I was like, and you know what? Chris will tell you that. Like, I was terrified. I was
Yeah.
terrified of this merge. And when you go back and you sort of unpack the fear, like, is that because I wasn't listening to my gut? Was I doing it, because I thought I had to? There's so many different emotions that went into that choice. And again, nobody did anything wrong. The partnership just didn't work, and again, that's okay. Um, And but yeah, there were fears along the way that I just chose to quell because I thought I was
Yes.
doing the right thing.
Yes. And because
Yes.
like you can't disseminate whether is this a fear that is like valid, or am I just scared and out of my comfort zone right now and have to learn the new normal? That's
I
like, which is like
Yes.
every endeavor ever, especially as a salesperson. Like,
Right.
you know, when you first start like cold calling or make cold dropping and going to
Yeah,
your first meetings, and you're like, I can't believe I'm saying this shit to this person. like,
I know. What am I doing? And why are they still listening to me?
right. And then you're like, and then you get used to like, okay, this is me out of my comfort zone and this is normal, which
Right.
is a very cool skill to have. But on
It
the
is.
Achilles heel of that skill is, how do I also trust my gut when things are actually awry and disseminating between, am I out of my comfort zone, or is something awry?
Yeah, I think that there are a set of questions that you have to ask yourself. If I were to go back and revisit that, really, really getting down to why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Who does it benefit? What are the short term, long term? I was doing math. I wasn't necessarily doing the what's the emotional impetus behind all of this, and how
Mhm.
will it impact me, and what power will I lose? And going through a little bit more of a touchy feely
Yeah.
process, pros and
Yeah.
cons process, then I was very pragmatic, and the math is mathing, and the math will math. um, but in doing so, I think I absolutely didn't listen to some of those fears that were
Yeah.
going on. But again, as you just said, sometimes in that moment it's so hard to discern,
Mm.
if that is actual fear or actual fear of change, right? False emotion appearing real, right? That's what fear stands for, and it's so true. But what emotion is not real? Which
It's,
one?
I know it's wild. I appreciate you sharing your story, and congrats, the Leap is back at it, and
Thank you, thank you.
rip roaring and onto a healthy Q1. I I when you first set your first point of don't forget your relationships, that really did resonate with me. It's funny because we're both in the networking business, for lack of a better way of
Right.
saying it. Um, it's funny how when things go south, how quickly people turtle, myself included. Like I forget about all the resources you have around you. What changed for you? Like I know you talked about the payroll situation. Did someone did someone, your husband or someone close to you, shake you and go, "Hey, who else can we call?" Or did you just work it out yourself?
I
Yeah,
am like, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm like, you are so much smarter than this. What are you missing?
yeah,
That's right in front of you, right? And it's
oh,
one of those exercises where you're like, you are missing something. So I went back through our entire life, and we've done almost a demo a day since 2020, right? So I went back through, I'm like, come on.
right, right.
Like, you are missing what's right in front of you. So it's just like I was missing those relationships that were right in front of me. I was missing those expectations that were just unspoken. I was missing listening to that voice,
Mm,
and the ego and all of those things. So there were just these little things missing along the way, and quite frankly, I don't think that there's any way around but through. There's
yeah,
no way around a situation. You just have to get through it. And for your listeners, I had to center myself, and I had to look at it like a blank page. Like, what
mm,
if I were solving this for my customer, and my customer
yeah,
came to me and said, what the hell do I do about payroll? What would I say to them? Like, how is it that I am, I have this great team, and we're these great advisors, and here I am in my own panic going, oh, well, how am I going to solve for that? Like, this is what we
mm.
do. But
But you
even
slowed
for,
down.
yeah, I had to slow down to
Slow
speed
down.
up.
Yeah,
I had to slow down to, because when all of the conflict is going through your brain, it's so hard to see solutions. And that's why, as advisors, if you hear somebody or a salesperson showing up on day one with solutions and all the things they're going to do,
right.
stop, drop, and roll, get out. You're on fire. This is not going to be good. because you need somebody that's going to listen, and those types of, that's going to slow down, and solution when solutioning is appropriate. And that's what I had to do. I had to slow down, I had to listen. What were the requirements? What would I tell my customers to do? And just kind of take the emotion out of it.
And when you slow down, you tend to eliminate some of the unspoken expectations too. Right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's like it's part and parcel to that. It's I love that. You just got me on two things. The Marcus Aurelius, the obstacle is the way. I'm totally with you on that, leaning into it. And I will say, of all of the things I've done in the last, I don't know, since I had kids, so probably 10 years, the gym I go to, the message is constantly slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yep.
And so like when my world is spinning, sometimes I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
slow is smooth, smooth is fast, but a lot
There
easier to
is
say than do it.
It is so a lot easier to say, and I've told the kayak story a million times, and I may have told it on the previous episode, but I'll tell it again because it's worth telling. My husband and I are polar opposites in that, like, he is a build your wings on the way down. Like he
Yeah,
says the squirrel suiting is going to be his final sport, right? Like it's just like he's an adrenaline junkie and will turn anything into. I have so many stories that I could tell of him turning a perfectly great familial sport into something that is,
like
is
death
defying. Right,
yes.
Right. So, I wanted to just do some simple mountain bike. We end up competitive downhill mountain biking. I wanted to do some kayaking. We end up class 4 whitewater kayaking, right? I'm like, I just wanted to kayak on a lake. I didn't wasn't interested in dying. And I'm always looking, for the safety, Sally's safety, right? Anyway, one of the most valuable lessons I learned whilst kayaking, right? You're in your kayak and you have a skirt on, right? And that's what keeps you in the boat, particularly when you're in freezing waters.
Yes.
Which I was, because you don't want to yard sail it, right? So yard sailing is just like when you're skiing and you lose all your shit going down the hill, right? Everything's gone. Same thing happens in a boat. Your paddle's gone. You've had to do a wet exit. Anyway, wherever you turn when you're in a kayak, wherever you turn your head is where your boat your boat goes, right? So if you are trying to avoid a giant rock, you're looking at the giant rock, don't look at it, right?
So true.
Or in my case, a giant blackberry bush that I was trying to avoid, and I ended up coming out looking like Wolverine had gotten hold of my face. I had like 4 bloody. My boat went right into it and just like was staring right at it. My husband's like, "Stop looking at it!" Like, but I don't want to go towards, right? But what that Wolverine moment taught me, despite the fact that the face bleeds a lot, is that where you put your energy is where you get the result.
Yeah.
And so, I had to put my energy into kind of stepping back, resetting. Like, so where you put your energy is where you get your result. If I'm staring at the big damn rock, I'm going to run into it. It's going to hurt me, could possibly drown, all of those types of things, right? And when you're upside down in your kayak in whitewater, you have to stay calm, to flip yourself back up, right? When you're in whitewater, you have to remain totally calm in complete and total chaos. And that is not easy to do.
Not at all. Not at all.
No.
The where you're looking is where you're going to go is that's powerful for people at all stages of their career.
Yeah.
Super powerful. And I appreciate you, LJ, being vulnerable with us, getting first fears and careers kicked off on this update series. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. You rule for that. And I think those 3 kind kind of walk away points of like, don't forget your relationships. Unspoken expectations are the killer of relationships, and be
Yes.
unapologetically you is phenomenal advice. It's phenomenal advice. And although I'm sure you didn't enjoy any of August or September, I can only imagine you're grateful for the experience because you're probably stronger on the other end of it. And it sounds like your team is too. So
We
congrats.
are. We have some great relationships. We stay close and positive with Newberry, because this is too
Yeah,
small of an industry to burn bridges. So we certainly don't want to do that. We respect what they do wholeheartedly. And sometimes things happen, but
they
it's
do.
important that we learn from them. And I appreciate you giving me the platform to share some of these lessons learned, because I just feel like there's a lot of sunshine and rainbows on LinkedIn,
I
and
know.
sometimes we need to hear about the other stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that. That's why we wanted to start Beers and Careers, is because it's not all unicorns and rainbows, and
It's not.
people eat a lot of shit on their way through their career journey. So
Sure do.
I'm sure, like you, I mean, like 2025 on to greener pastures. But thanks again for sharing your story, and best of luck to Leap in the new year.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mark.
Awesome.